The narration time in lines, 2 pink lines that never showed up. My bathroom drawer was a museum of tests and hope. I would line them up on the counter like piano keys, practicing a song I never learned to play. Soon, my husband Mark would say, pressing a kiss to the back of my head, "We'll start a family soon." I married Mark because he made soon sound like a promise carved into something permanent. We met in a rock climbing gym, of all places. He held the belay rope and told me he had my back. The metaphor was irresistible. At 32, I wanted a partner who showed up with sturdy knots and steady hands. He did. He was soft-spoken, funny, and a little self-deprecating in a way that made him seem safe. We talked about travel, about houses, about kids. He said 2, maybe 3, and I tucked the number in my pocket like a souvenir. The first year of marriage was champagne and IKEA and figuring out how to sleep with someone who hogs the sheets. The second year was vitamins, period tracking apps, decaf coffee, no more sushi, and timed intimacy that left us both breathless, but not in the way it once did. I learned to ovulate on Tuesdays. I learned to become an amateur cardiologist of my own heartbeat. The first fertility appointment came. It was supposed to be routine. "You're both young," the doctor said. "We'll do a standard workup. Blood draws for me, a semen analysis for Mark." We left the clinic holding hands, the paper bracelet still around my wrist like an apology. He canceled his appointment. "Work emergency," he said, tapping his phone. The second appointment was rescheduled because of a client dinner. The third, he actually went, but came home with the sample cup still in his jacket pocket and a sheepish smile, like a kid caught stealing cookies. "Stage fright," he said, wincing. "I'll go next week." I didn't want to be the nagging wife, so I said nothing. My silence grew calluses. I learned to take my prenatal vitamins without tasting them. I learned to breathe through ultrasounds that showed nothing but polite emptiness. In year 3, the doctor sent me for more tests. "Let's rule out endometriosis," she said, which sounded like a villain in a fairy tale. They found nothing wrong. "Have your husband complete his part," the nurse said, her tone warm but firm, the way my grandmother used to talk to me about coat buttons in winter. "It's half the picture." I went home and placed the paperwork on the kitchen counter where I knew he'd see it. I even taped a sticky note to the coffee machine, "Lab hours, MF, 8 to 5, heart." He tossed the note, but swore he'd go. "Soon," he said again. That word had become a splinter I couldn't dig out. The night I found out, I was not snooping. I want to keep saying that because it matters. The insurance portal had logged me out, and when I tried to log back in, it redirected me to a shared family dashboard. His name sat there next to mine, a neat row of claims and visits. My cursor hovered. All I wanted was to find the code for my last ultrasound so I could appeal a ridiculous denial. Instead, I saw it. Urology, outpatient procedure. The date was bold, black, unforgiving, 3 years before we met. Beneath it, a code I didn't recognize. I copied it into Google and stared as the words came up. Bilateral vasectomy. The screen pulsed. I actually felt the bruise of my heartbeat in my throat, like I'd swallowed something too large. My first thought was that I had misunderstood. Maybe there was another mark with the same birthday, the same address. Maybe it was a different word that looked like vasectomy, an autocorrect for a life I didn't live. Then I clicked the document link, and the PDF opened like a door I didn't want to walk through. His full name. His signature. I closed the laptop. Then I opened it again. I read the date 3 times. I checked our How We Met timeline in my head like an airport schedule. He had a vasectomy before our first date, before the day he told me he wanted kids, before he promised he was ready for the next chapter. Everything toppled, like those clicky domino videos. The ones that are satisfying until you realize it's your life. When he came home, I was carving an apple into quarters that looked like broken moons. "Hey," he said, dropping his keys in the bowl. "You okay? You look pale." "Did you have a vasectomy?" My voice surprised me. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't even a tremble. It was flat, like a note held too long. He froze. I watched him rearrange his face, hunting for the right expression to wear. "Where is this coming from?" "Insurance portal," I said. My hands smelled like apple and steel. "There's a claim, a procedure, a date." He sat down heavily at the table, the chair scraping the tile. He pressed his fingers to his lips like a child practicing silence. For a moment, I thought he might laugh it off. But then he spoke, and his voice sounded very far away. "Yes. Before we met." He nodded. "So, for 3 years?" I set the knife down very carefully. "You've let me time sex with ovulation apps? You've watched me inject hormones for tests I didn't need? You've promised me soon, knowing this was impossible?" "It's reversible," he said quickly, leaning forward as if the word could bridge a chasm. "I mean, sometimes. I always thought if it got serious, I'd get it reversed. Then work got crazy, and your mom got sick, and the gym?" I shot back. "The trips you canceled? Are there work emergencies during your lab appointments? What were those? Scenery?" His hands shook. I almost reached for them and then stopped, because they were not mine to steady. "I was scared," he said. "I made a bad decision years ago with my ex. She didn't want kids, neither did I. We were young, and it seemed clean, final. Then we broke up, and I felt stupid. When I met you, I wanted you so much it hurt. I told myself I'd fix it. I told myself there was time." "There was a time," I said. "You just spent it letting me hope." He started crying then, which I had seen only once before, when his grandfather died. "I didn't know how to tell you. Every time I tried, your face would light up talking about baby names or the little shoes you bought on sale for someday, and I'd go numb. I told myself I was protecting you from disappointment. I told myself I'd make it right before it mattered." "It mattered the second you lied," I said, and the words landed between us like glass. We slept in separate rooms that night. I could hear him moving in the guest room, the sound of drawers opening and closing like a metronome of regret. I lay on our bed, hand on my stomach, a gesture I used to imagine would feel like pressing a palm to a future. Now it felt like guarding a wound. The next morning, he made coffee I didn't drink. "There's a surgeon," he said. "Reversals have good outcomes if they've been less than 10 years. I've already emailed. I'll do it. I'll do anything." I Googled success rates with the kind of focus people reserve for prayers. 40 to 90%. Numbers that felt like dice rolled on a table in a dim room with too much smoke. Meanwhile, I called my mother. She listened and didn't say "I told you so," because she's kind. "If someone lies about a fundamental thing," she said softly, "what does that tell you about the foundation?" I went for a walk and counted all the strollers I used to count with sweet jealousy. Today, they looked like warning signs. My best friend, Anna, called me fierce names on my behalf. "Annulment," she said, spitting the word like a seed. "Fraud. He lied about an essential thing." I sat with the word annulment, the way you sit with a stranger who has your eyes. Annulment sounded like erasing ink that had already soaked into the page. Divorce sounded like tearing a page out and carrying the rip with you forever. Forgiveness sounded like duct tape over a crack in a vase you never trusted not to leak again. Mark asked if we could see a counselor. I said yes, because I wanted a witness. The therapist wore sensible shoes and listened without blinking. "You've committed what we call a betrayal trauma," she told Mark gently. "It's not just about children. It's about consent to a life. You deprived her of informed choice." He sobbed into a tissue that looked too delicate for the job. I described the months of timed sex and quiet humiliation, the white rooms with cold instruments. My body turned into a project with a failing timeline. Saying it out loud made me shake. I'd rather be told a hard truth than live a soft lie, I said, and my voice broke on lie. By the third session, I had realized something bleak and liberating. I could love him and still leave. My loyalty could be complicated without being dumb. He scheduled the reversal consultation and put the appointment card on the fridge like a magnet for hope. I looked at it and felt nothing but fatigue. The last conversation in the house we made into a home was gentler than I expected. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm protecting myself." He nodded, tears slipping into the collar of his t-shirt. "I will sign whatever you need," he whispered. "Annulment, divorce. I don't deserve you." "I wish wanting me had been enough to tell me the truth," I said. We stood there in the kitchen, two people who had loved each other well and badly. In the end, I chose the legal path that recognized what had happened, that I had married under a premise he hid. I sat in a quiet office and signed documents with a pen that left an elegant line. Annulment felt less like erasure and more like a correction in the ledger where someone had recorded a false deposit. It still hurts. I moved into a small apartment with a balcony where I planted basil and a stubborn little rosemary bush. I kept the wedding photos on a thumb drive, a private museum I don't visit. In the evenings, I walk and don't count strollers. I joined a support group for women whose stories bend at strange angles. Secret vasectomies, hidden infertility, partners who promised soon while they packed their truth into a locked box. Sometimes I think about the reversal Mark scheduled. I don't know if he went. I don't know if it worked. I wish him healing, the kind that makes him honest next time. I wish myself the same. Here's what I learned. A promise is not a plan, and soon is not a calendar. Love is not an anesthesia that makes surgery painless. If children are part of your dream, speak it like a boundary, not a hope. Ask the questions that feel impolite. Believe people when they show you who they are, but also remember they can be a door with a deadbolt you'll never find the key to. Some mornings, I still wake up reaching for a future that isn't here yet. I make coffee anyway. I whisper soon to myself and mean it differently. Not a promise someone else can break, but a direction I walk toward on my own two legs, with my hands open, not empty.